Can you state your full name?
Jane Miles Stewart.
Okay, and where are you from?
I'm from Michigan.
How old were you during September 11th, 2001?
I was about 37, maybe almost 38 years old.
Alright, how was it like traveling by plane before and after 9/11?
Oh, it's quite a bit different now. Used to be able to just go right to the boarding gates pretty easily without going through so much security. Now there's quite a bit more security. And used to be able to pick people up right at the gate instead of having to wait for them down at baggage claim. Now you have to go through layers of security and different types of things where you have to take off your shoes, you have to put things on conveyor belts, and you have to stand there and get yourself inspected.
How did you find out about it at the time?
I was in a babysitting co-op, and Andrew and Becca Enerson's mom dropped off the two kids. They were ages like 3 and 4 or 3 and 5, and she said, "Did you hear about the plane that hit the World Trade Center?" I said no, and she said, "Well, after the kids, go away, I should take a look." She was really scared and freaked out, and I thought it was no big. Well, I thought it was tragic. I thought it was like a Cessna, one of those two-person planes, but it was far from that. So I didn't actually see it for myself on the news until after I put the kids down for naps several hours later.
All right. What was your initial reaction to hearing the plane hit?
Oh, my initial reaction was that, oh my dear Lord, this is it. We're going to war. We're going to see what it's like. The people who went through World War II, it's going to be something like that. I equated it to almost like Pearl Harbor. And I also had this feeling like it wasn't a big surprise because this kind of acts of terrorism had been happening all over the world. It just hadn't really happened on U.S. soil since Pearl Harbor. So in some ways, I always had a worldview, and I always thought we had, by the grace of God, avoided this for an extremely long time, and that it was almost, not that it was that we deserved it or it was due, but we were going to experience what the rest of the world experienced.
And do you think the U.S. responded correctly immediately after the attack?
Well, immediately after the attack, they shut down the borders. I remember at night you could hear planes going because they were traveling from Selfridge Air Force Base, and they were patrolling the Windsor Canadian-U.S. border. So you could hear it all night long, but it was eerie because there were no jets. We could hear planes landing generally. September is when we keep our windows open at night. You could hear planes generally land, but they weren't there. It was fighter jets traveling in formations, so that was creepy. But then the long-term reaction, when you go back in hindsight, there were no weapons of mass destruction, so we had no business going into Iraq, and the whole Gulf War was a scam.
So what lessons should be learned from 9/11?
That we are now in a global society. What are tragedies and things that happen throughout the world will also happen here in the U.S., that we need to be prepared, that the lessons learned is that when you create war, there's always a reaction, and it's more severe than the action itself, and that's how things escalate. So if we were attacked by Al-Qaeda, we returned the attack to Iraq, which was not quite the right people, and Afghanistan, which would have been Al-Qaeda, but then that spurned ISIS and ISIL, and they will attack in bigger formations, and it just creates more endless war.
What about 9/11 would you want students to know to this day?
I would want to make sure people knew that there were no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Iraq was not involved with the 9/11 attack, but Bush took the U.S. and many other countries to war against Iraq erroneously and made the world a worse off place.
And were you personally connected to anyone in the towers, Pentagon, or planes? What happened to them?
No, I didn't have any personal stories of anyone in the towers. There was someone from our neighborhood, actually, who was an IT person, and he was scheduled to go to the towers that day and to meet with one of his clients, and his babysitter backed out at the last minute, so he canceled that trip that day, and it potentially saved his life.
So that story comes from the babysitting co-op.
Yeah, it does.
What do you remember about the nation and its leaders coming together in the days following September 11th?
Well, it was very patriotic. Everyone hung a flag out in front of their house. There was no air travel, so many people got in their cars and just drove to New York City to help with to clean up the mess and to try to save people. But no one really survived the incident that was trapped in the building. They were hoping there would be survivors in the rubble.
All right.
That didn't happen.
Last question. Did you visit any of the 9/11? Did you visit any of the locations of the 9/11 attack? What do you remember?
I've been to New York City since before that happened.
Not even with Grace?
Oh, I did go there. We did not visit that, no.